I'd love, I'm telling you guys, this time right now is my favorite time in this area of the country. And up north, it was the fall, but I love the spring in Roanoke. I love to see the dogwoods come out, the cherry blossoms come out. And, but this March thing is a weird animal because it's like it dangles the carrot, You get this nice weather and then, it pulls away. And some of our worst snows have been in March. Isn't that the truth? So anyway, but thank God that he stayed his hand a little bit, at least in this area, and we get to have church this morning. Amen? Amen. We have been in this series on Dare to Repair, Replenish versus replacing broken relationships. This is like our fifth, I think, or sixth week in it. It's in Hosea chapter 2 and how God is dealing with the Israelites after 724 years of idolatry. And he keeps reaching. He could have easily replaced them, but he doesn't. He keeps reaching for them. And we're learning some lessons from it. I don't know how many of you are familiar with a pastor by the name of Bill Hybels. He just retired a couple years ago from his church. Started a church back in the early 70s. It was a youth group. Ended up becoming one of the most impacting churches in the nation and one of the largest. And in that, there was a moment of time. I've heard him talk about it. He shared with us about it. He's written about it in his book. Very self-revealing. And he talks about a time in the early stages of his ministry at Willow where he and his wife both would say that he got caught up in adulterous relationship. But it wasn't with a woman or a man. It was with his church. He was so throwing himself into the church work that he was neglecting the relationship of his wife and children. And it literally threatened their marriage. And they went into a time of real testing. And in describing that time, he uses an analogy of skiing. He and his family are very active. And one of the things that they love to do is snow ski. And when you're going, his church is on the outskirts of Chicago in northern Indiana. And when you go west, heading to the Rockies to ski, he didn't ever identify this place. Might have been Vail, it might have been Aspen, or it might have been somewhere in Utah. But there was this great place that he said is the best skiing in the Western Hemisphere. But because of the Rockies, going from east to west, there was only one way to get there. And it was this, you've heard me talk about it before, it's this long, very long, narrow, dark tunnel that you've got to drive through and maneuver through to get to this virgin snow. It's the best skiing around, but you got to go through the tunnel to get to the good stuff. Well, he takes that into that tunnel into a relationship dynamic, and he labels the tunnel of chaos. You've heard me talk about it. And he would say that every relationship gets to this tunnel and you have to make a decision in that relationship whether you're going to go through the tunnel or not. And it's long and it's dark and it's painful, but when you get through it, it's the best you can possibly imagine. And he would talk about many people in their relationship, maybe with their spouse or their extended family, maybe their boss or their coworkers, maybe their church, people within the inner circle. They get to this tunnel and they're too afraid to go through it. So at that critical moment, defining moment, they turn around, they go back. And they dispose of that relationship. They replace it, and they find another relationship, whether it's new job, new church, new wife, new husband, new family, whatever it is. But whatever they do, it goes right back eventually to that tunnel. Every relationship goes there. And so you get the same decision again. And they make the same choice. And they turn around, they go back, and they replace that relationship with another. And they just keep going back and forth, back and forth. Or possibly it's the same relationship, but they've just settled for less. Maybe they don't throw the relationship away, but it's not authentic. It's not genuine because they're not paying the price to get to the good place on the other side. Does that make sense to you? That is what Hosea is talking about with Israel. All these verses, in verses 16, 17, 18, he's all talking about the future. He's talking in these verses about this place on the other side of the tunnel. And the first point, though, in the very first part of verse 16, the first three words in verse 16, it says, in that day, there's a day coming when we're going to get through this tunnel. And there's a great place over there. And he's basically saying, you want to get to that place. You want to get, in fact, write this down. The point is, there is a place you want to go. You want to get there because it's worth it. I've referred to this in the past. There's so many times when younger couples who are going through pain and transition and button heads, and they'll look at some other older couple, and they look so in love, and he's sitting there in church with his arm around his bride, and they don't have any problems, and it's a walk through the tulips, and they say, I want to be like them. I want to be like them. But they don't know. They don't know the journey. You know, I had that couple in my office. And if you knew, there's one particular couple several years back. They're long gone now. But they were just a wonderful couple and such a cute couple. And everybody, I want to be like them. You know. But if they knew in the early days, he cheated on his wife about 5, 6, 7 times in adultery. Put her through hell. He was a jerk. The only thing is that we can say about it is that they made it through the tunnel. For whatever reason, she didn't replace him. She stuck with him and made it through, and now they've got this beautiful thing going on the other side. Are you with me this morning? Now, guys, I'm going to say something to you, and you're going to miss it. And then somebody like David Jeremiah or Andy Stanley is going to say it, and you're going to hear it and say, did you hear what Andy Stanley said? Now, I said it 5 years ago, you know. Now, listen to me. Don't miss this, because I want credit. The same things, I've said this to you before, the same things that destroy some marriages are the exact same things God uses to build great marriages. Just went right over you. I can tell. Just truth. Here we go again. Are you ready? The things that destroy some marriages. Terrible things. You say, oh, nobody could survive that. Are the exact same things God has used and is using to build great marriages. The only difference is that these guys make it through the tunnel. Are you with me this morning? Amen. There's a place you want to go. You want to get there. You want to pay the price. Write this down. Second thing we learn from this place that Hosea is talking about is there's a grace you want to know. There's a grace you want to know. And the next phrase of verse 16, it says, you will call me my what? Come on, guys, are you with me? You will call me my husband. You will no longer call me my master. Something happens in the DNA of that relationship as you're going through the tunnel. Before the tunnel, it's a servant-master thing. But after the tunnel, it's a husband-wife thing. If we're talking about work, before the work, maybe it's a boss employee thing. But after the tunnel, it can be a team thing with a team captain and then a team player. Or if with the church, something happens where you go deeper in that relationship. And guys, I want you to hear this. I already said it earlier in the first point. Every relationship goes there. Husband, wife, church, work, boss, every relationship goes to the tunnel. Then you have to choose if you're going to pay the price. Some of you guys, bless your heart, the people who make it through the tunnel have a maturity that happens to them. And God can change their heart to the point where, there's what you love. Oh, kissy poo, huggy poo, kissy poo, huggy. It might be husband, might be work, might be church. Oh, everything's coming up roses. And then something happens and you go south. All of a sudden you don't feel the way you used to feel. God can do something about that. In fact, if you want to get to the good stuff, you've got to let Him do something about that. I want to read 3 verses that deal with 3 different stages in David's life. In Psalm 51:7, it says, "My heart is fixed, O God. My heart is fixed. I will sing," talking about praises. "I will sing and make music. Awaken my soul. Awake the harp and lyre. I will awaken the dawn with my praise." Now there's the heart that's hot, right? Right? Now jump into Psalms 51. "Create in me a clean heart, O God. Renew a right spirit within me. Cast me not from your presence, nor take your Holy Spirit from me. Restore unto me the joy of your salvation, and grant me a willing spirit to sustain me." Well, shoot, man, something's gone wrong. Psalm 51 was written right after he sinned with Bathsheba. Something's happened. Where's all the warm fuzzies? Where's the kissy poo, huggy poo? It's gone. Now he needs a new heart. Something's changed. But he doesn't quit. He doesn't give up. He makes it through the tunnel. And if you turn to the very end of David's life, after the old warrior gets old, and it's his last words in 2 Samuel chapter 23, this old warrior says, "The Spirit of the Lord spoke through me. His word is on my tongue. The God of Israel spoke. The Rock of Israel said to me, when one rules over people in righteousness, when he rules in the fear of God, he is like the light of the morning at sunrise, on a cloudless morning, like the brightness after the rain that brings grass from the earth. If my house were not right with God, surely he would not have made with me an everlasting covenant, arranged and secured in every part. Surely he would not bring to fruition my salvation and grant me my every desire." There's a heart that's hot. Well, what happened to that heart that needed to be renewed? God did a new thing. Now, guys, listen to me now. I don't care how you're ticked about that spouse. I don't care what he or she has done. God can create a new heart. And the greatest marriages are the ones where He's had to create new hearts. Or the job. Maybe even the church. There is a grace that you want to know. Number 3. There is no trace of status quo. Write that down. There is no trace of status quo. Look at verse 17. I will remove the names of the Baals from her lips. No longer will their names be invoked. You remember last week and the week before, we were talking about addiction? Remember that? It wasn't that the sin was running after Israel. It was that Israel was running after the sin. They were addicted to their gods, their false gods. Well, now verse 17 comes along, and they've been delivered. Why? They made it through the tunnel. See? And some of the things that hit you and are destroying you at the beginning of the tunnel, when you make it through, the enemy can't hit you as hard at the other side of the tunnel. When you make it through the tunnel, it's not as hard for you to trip up yourself. The things that have control of you don't have control of you anymore. Because you made it through the tunnel. You paid the price. You know what I see? In fact, I've encountered it this morning right after the first service. I had all kinds of people come up and say, Pastor, this happened to me. This happened to me. Well, I don't want to go down that road. I just love hearing the stories, but if I start doing that, then I'm cooked. You know what one of the indicators is, I believe, of getting through the tunnel? Paying the price for that relationship. You become more content with where you are. And the grass in the other guy's yard doesn't look as green as it used to. You know what I think is one of the results of making it through the tunnel in our relationships? There's a maturity that helps to protect ourselves against ourselves. There's an ability to live. Listen to me now. There's an ability to live in reality, not the fairy tale. How many times does the enemy come and create this make-believe fairy tale? If you just go over there. Do you like that slow-mo? If you just make it over there, everything will be okay. You know, this job is a pain in the back, but over there, there's a company, they have a boss, and he would love me and care more about me than the company. And everybody works and gets along fine. Of course, everything's going to the pits in my company, but over there, everything be good over there. Or church. You know, something gone wrong, gone south. You're not feeling the kissy-poo, huggy-poo, but over there, there's a pastor who preaches only 15 minutes. You know? Or in our homes, in our marriages. Some of you gals, your husband hasn't heard a word to come out of your mouth in the last 5 years. But now there's this fellow over here. He hangs on every word. He notices you when you change your hair color. Husband hadn't noticed that. Oh, if I could just go over there. It looks so green over there. Or, boy, that pretty gal in that skirt that's always about 10 years younger than your spouse. Oh, I just saw that hit. I just saw that. Sharon just gave whop to Carl. I'm just kidding. There's nothing behind that. I should have never said that. It's all make-believe. It's all make-believe. And you buy into it and you find out the truth, but of course you have to cross the line before that happens. And you've done the damage. But somebody who's made it through the tunnel, they have an ability to live in reality. They see what the truth is, you know? They don't give in to Tinkerbell. Tinkerbell with the pixie dust takes you to Disneyland. Everybody is happy forever and ever. Says, nah, there's no pixie dust or whatever you call that stuff. This is reality. It becomes harder to trip yourself up Whatever the enemy was using, the addiction before you made it into the tunnel. When you make it out of the tunnel, there's this ability to break whatever addiction was back there. That's part of getting through the tunnel. Are we okay? Then he moves down in verse 18, and he talks about, in that day, I will make a covenant for them with the beasts of the field and the birds of the sky and the creatures that move along the ground. You know what he's talking about there? When Hosea is talking about this Israel and their love for their idols and all of that, he's constantly, throughout this whole series, he's constantly going back in the past, comparing to the golden calf that Aaron made and coming out of slavery. Well, this reference goes all the way back to the garden when there was no curse. And, there was no wild beasts that were, wanting to have you for lunch, or no poisonous snakes that are going to bite you and kill you, or no pestilence that would destroy your crops. There was this utopia back there. Well, making it through the tunnel of chaos doesn't take you back to that utopia, but I tell you what it can do. It can take you to a place of maturity and strength and healthy relationships, so that when an unfair, uncontrollable, unkind world throws you a curveball, it doesn't have to just totally blow you out of the water. There's a stability. How many of you guys like to play chess? Okay, there's a few of you. I am told, if he's not the best, if he's not number one, he's up there. A guy by the name of Magnus Carlsen. He's a Norwegian or Swede. And he's, I think, the grand champion, but I'm not sure. When you go up against a guy like Magnus, these guys, they don't think about the next move. They think about the next move and the next move and the next move. It's like, I'm going to move here, and then he's going to go here. And when he goes here, I'm going to do this. And then he's going to come in here and do this. Then I'm going to come down and I'm going to checkmate him. I mean, they're 3, 4, 5 moves ahead, And let's say you're going up against Magnus, okay? And he's got your number. He's got you pegged. You're going down. But let's say you get unbelievably lucky and you make some silly move that he wasn't anticipating. At that point, do you think Magnus has a sissy fit and loses his peace and says, oh, whatever shall I do? He made a move I wasn't expecting. Everything's lost. You think that's going to happen? Are you kidding me? You make some unexpected move he wasn't anticipating. You know what that boy does? He makes a mid-course correction and cleans your clock. That's what God can do with somebody who makes it through the tunnel and life throws a curveball. It's not fun, it hurts, but it doesn't blow you out of the water. Are you with me? Let me give you the fifth one, because time is fleeting. Am I ready for the fifth one? Fourth one. Oh my gracious, we got to hurry. There is a pace for you to flow. There's a pace for you to flow. Look at verse 18. In that day, still talking about the future, in that day, I will make a covenant for them with the beasts of the field, the birds of the sky, and the creatures that move along the ground. That sure does sound like the one I just covered. Is it? So I'm ready for number 5, right? I don't know what I'd do without you guys. I would be re-preaching this sermon till 7 o'clock tonight thinking that I'm not repeating myself. All right, number 5, right? We're ready? Number 5? Write this down. There is an arms race you want to stow. There's an arms race you want to stow. Now, we're ready for the second half, verse 18. Listen to this. Bow and sword and battle I will abolish from the land, so that all may lay down in what? Safety. Bow and sword and battle I will abolish from the land, so that all may lay down in safety. These last 3 points, in point number 3, we're basically saying, you make it through the tunnel, it'll help you to get out of your own way. When you make it through the tunnel, it will help you when the world throws you a curveball to keep it from robbing you of your joy. And number 3, when you make it through the tunnel, this number 5, it will keep the enemy who attacks you from robbing you of your joy. Talks about bow and sword and battle. Let's use David. What did David use for battle when he was a kid? What did he do? Slingshot, right? Killed the lion, killed the bear, killed the big boy with a slingshot. But when he became a general, what did he have to do? He had to put the slingshot away and learn to use something else. What was it? A sword. Slingshot's not a cut bait when you're in the middle of a battle and you got to do a lot of damage with a lot of people that's close to you. He had to learn to use a sword. And so the bow, the sword, does more damage. Now, if he would have lived long enough, he would have learned to use something else that came along that could really do some damage. What is it? A gun. Now the slingshot gives way to bow and arrow. That gives way to guns and bombs. Now we can blow away a lot of people in this military attack. In our world, we don't use bows and arrows. What do we use? This thing. This thing right here. We battle with this. And a few years ago, a little before my time, I might add, something came along that enabled us to use this even more. Do you know what it was? It's called a telephone. And all of a sudden, we had a technological ability to take this tongue and spread it a lot farther, a lot faster than we ever had before. Now, I hope this is right. Maybe, 30 years ago? Something else showed up that makes this even more damaging. Do you know what it is? Facebook. Instagram, whatever that is. Twitter. Snapshot. I know that's not right because I did it the first hour. I know it's Snapshoot, right? Snapchat, right? See, I know. I don't know how to use any of that stuff. But now this thing, this thing can do some serious damage. Do you know, you all know this from experience, you could have 100 people compliment you and have one person criticize. What do you walk home thinking about? It just takes a little bit of negativity on this to wipe out a lot of good stuff. And every now and then, I'm not going to go down this road very far, but every now and then, someone will come to me. I don't look at this stuff, but I have ears and eyes like you wouldn't believe out there. And someone will come up and say, did you hear about so-and-so, what they put on the Facebook about the church? You know what that does to me? Man, it just nails me and takes me to a dark place. Even though there might be, 100 pluses, 100 good comments, but somebody on the Facebook and spreads it and, nails me. Do you know where my heart is heavy this morning? It's for brothers and sisters in this room right now, this week, possibly, from your inner circle. You've taken a hit from this, from somebody that's important to you. I want to share a verse and then Shoot, time goes so fast. In our life group, got a great life group. We're on Psalms 119. Mark Trammell teaches it. He's out of town today, but he'll have us read this. 119 is this big old long psalm. You know that, right? It's got tons of verses. And he just deals with a section, and he has us read all the verses in that section. It goes around the circle. And I was just sitting there listening to the other people read, and it came to verse 23. Psalm 119, verse 23. You know what it says? We think, most people think David wrote Psalm 119. Not totally sure, but probably wrote Psalm 119. And he says in it, though princes sit together and slander me, I will meditate on God's precepts. His statutes I delight. They are my counselors. And when that person just read it in routine, going around, it was like bang! Like bang! In my heart. It's like, John, did you just hear that? You know? It was that like, They're talking about him negatively behind his back. And if David wrote it, which he probably did, do you know who those princes are if it's David who wrote that thing? His own sons. Inner circle. Nailing him from the backside. All of a sudden, that verse became very, very relevant. But you know what else I hear? I hear David refusing to focus on the slander. Now listen to me, guys. He's very careful about who he listens to in his ears. He doesn't listen to that. He listens to the precepts of his God. He delights in the statutes. They are his counselors. He is guarding who he listens to. Don't lose your focus. There's a place you want to get to. You're the best there is. Go get 'em. You're dismissed.